Witch College. Learn anything, anytime, anywhere education. witchcollege.co.
A hand-carved natural quartz crystal ball made into a necklace for divination on the go. Crystal balls have been used for centuries in healing and cleansing rituals, as well as for divination. The sphere represents infinity and the circle of life. While a wand uses focused energy, the crystal ball sends out energy in all directions. This makes it a great resource for discovering the complete circumstances surrounding a question.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Everyday Witchcraft. Tonight's special guest is Maeve Wilders. She is High Priestess of Wild Thistle Witchcraft Coven, and she's also the owner of Bell Book and Bone. So, no further ado, let's welcome Maeve. Welcome to another episode of Everyday Witchcraft. Today we have Maeve Wilders. How you doing, Maeve?
Hi. How are you
We're
doing?
here to talk about death doula, being a death doula. That sounds pretty interesting. That's something that was a new one to me. I've never heard of it. Can you tell us a little bit about it, what it is?
Yes, and it is newer. Birth doulas came first. They were, of course, always existed as long as women have been birthing children, and death doulas have been around as long as people have been passing. There's always been somebody there that understood the birthing process or the dying process. And so they were able to make it easier and more understandable and take away the fear, because it's a huge life change. And you just want somebody there that you trust. And so that's what these people are. They're people there that are non-medical professionals who don't always have to be certified. I'm going to recommend, though, that you do in the future, and I'll tell you why in a minute, that are there to be compassionate, to help you with all the logistics of death and dying, because it's gotten kind of tricky lately. It's really strange. They're going to work out some of those sticky situations you might have with family. They're going to help you plan your funeral. They're going to be clergy if you need them. So if you have any kind of faith wishes, they help you meet those. And they just make your passing much more dignified. And they just help you stay at home if that's your wish. And that's kind of what a death doula does. They meet you where you're at and take that fear away.
What kind of services does that entail? I mean, you talked about kind of getting your arrangements together and things like that. They don't have to be like an attorney or anything like that, correct?
Correct. So a death doula, one of her tools is going to be state-specific paperwork, but they're commonly known as a do not resuscitate form. And that's going to help you have that conversation with your patient. Because one of the very first things that the death doula is going to do once she meets her patient is find out what their prognosis is. Do they know how long they have left to live? And from there, figure out what it's going to look like, the dying process. But you need to help them understand what CPR looks like. Do they want it? You need to help them figure out how to fill out a living will, a power of attorney. And the power of attorney comes with like an advance directive. They're kind of tied together, and it's 4 or 5 sheets of paperwork, and it can feel redundant and go back and forth over each other. But it's important that you make sure the patient's absolute wishes are presented on those papers, because when they're not able to speak any longer, the family members have to know what's on there. They have to have copies of it, and they have to be willing to speak for the patient, especially if you're not going to be there. Now, the DNR has to be signed by a physician and notarized. And one of the tricks that I learned was when my grandfather passed away, I wasn't able to get his primary care physician to sign his DNR paperwork. And that was my grandfather's greatest wish. He just wanted to pass away at home with his family. Cannot get telehealth to do a DNR. They won't do it in any state in the United States. So you have to call an ambulance. They have to get in the ambulance and go to the emergency room, and you have to convince the emergency room physician not to place your loved one in ICU. And at the time, it was really difficult for me because this is what I do, and I couldn't do it for my grandpa. So I actually called the woman that trained me in tears, just devastated that I couldn't make this happen for him. And I was the only one he asked to make it happen because he knew that was my job. I don't know what she said to that physician, but I saw the fear of many gods cross his face. And we were immediately put in an ambulance and sent home. So she was an interesting individual, but those papers are really, really helpful. They make sure everybody follows their wishes about how they want to die. Makes it clean, clear, no issues, especially when the patient actually passes away. Takes away the need to have to call 911 and report that a patient has died at home. If you have the DNR and the plan and everything is in place, you can just contact the funeral home, because you're working with them and the patient to plan their ultimate funeral. And that's one of the things that you really do with them that most people don't think about. Only about 20% of Americans think about how they want to die, and they face it, and it causes a traumatic end, and people just don't heal from those. So a lot of people really carry that trauma with them after their loved one has died, and they aren't able to heal from it.
Yeah, that's sad. Now, I used to, a long time ago in another life, I worked for attorneys, and we handled the do not resuscitate and the power of attorney and the living will and all that kind of stuff. Um, what is the legal, I guess, what is the legal line? Because, you know, most people would go to an attorney to do those things. What is the benefit of being with a death doula is what I'm trying to say. Because, you know, people that question, well, is it legal? Of course it's legal or you wouldn't be doing it. But what is the benefit of it? Is it like the personal touch that you put with it, working with somebody?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A death doula, I'm not saying an attorney wouldn't do this, because an attorney that would sit down with you and explain an directive or a power of attorney, they're absolutely more compassionate than like your district attorney.
Yeah.
They have a little bit more humanity to them, I think. But a death doula, this is what we do. This is what we see every day. And we're able to explain it to your family, and we're able to make sure there are nuances listed in there that are confusing even to nurses. And now I will say I'm a registered nurse. So I'm not technically a certified death doula. I went into it totally backwards. I, as a registered nurse, was sending my hospice patients home and getting them back in the hospital 3 days later because there was a huge gap in care. When I sent them home with hospice, those hospice nurses were only there for 2 hours a day, 1 or 2 days a week. And my hospice patients weren't getting enough care. And I was like, what fills that gap? And so I just started calling. I was like, will Medicare pay for this? Well, is there a gap insurance that pays for this? What fills this gap? And that's how I found death doulas. And I found them volunteering at other hospice companies. And so I was like, gonna need you to come teach me what you do. And they did. They were so happy to do it. And so I had them come to the floor and teach all of my nurses what they do. And they taught my CNAs. And then I had them teach ICUs and cardiac ICUs. And I was just like, this is so important. And, you know, we're seeing people turn 65. I think they're saying something crazy like 75 million people are turning 65 every week. And that's just insane. You know, our hospice companies, our ICUs and hospitals, these people are not going to have the care that they need. And that's where death doulas are going to come in and fill that gap. And I wouldn't have known if I hadn't been paying close attention and had those repeat patients coming in and seeing what that gap in care was doing. And it was causing them to live in an undignified manner, in pain, and die quicker than they had to. And that's not our goal ever. You know, as a hospice nurse and then as a death doula, I always wanted them to have dignity, to feel respected, to feel seen and loved, and definitely didn't want the family to feel like they were running around not being heard. And that's how they were feeling. So that's what the death doula does. They stopped it. They stopped all of that. Our patients were cared for in ways that they were not getting cared for. So they're that stopgap. So they can provide companionship while you go take a shower or a bath. Or they could just run to the grocery store for you if you wanted to sit with your dad for a little bit. They can help you go to the funeral home with you and explain the funeral process. Or you might not be the one that's able to sit down and talk to your dad about how he wants his funeral. It might just be too hard for you. I was my best friend and high priestess's constant companion to all of her chemotherapy appointments, and she had triple negative HER2 positive breast cancer, and that's incurable. But she was a fighter, so we fought, and we got into remission twice. And then the third time she came out and got me, and she was like, hey, let's go talk. We did. We went in the backyard and we talked. She threw out food to the chickens, and that's how she wanted to talk about her funeral. She wanted to have a gigglyana. She wanted everybody to come and laugh until they peed their pants. She wanted several people to come and talk, and then she wanted a party, and she wanted to be cremated. But these were not things that she could tell her mom or her husband or her sister, because she knew that they would feel her loss too deeply to actually do what she wanted. So she told me, and between me and her other best friend, we were able to help plan that with her husband so that she got her wishes, and he was comforted by that. He saw her in every single step of that funeral. And as a death doula, you really want the funeral to be that last piece of comfort, because you're really aiming at making sure it's a celebration of life. It's not the end of life. One of my friends today posted something about a poem about death and dying. And one of the best things that I've ever learned as a death doula is, if you really want to keep somebody alive, you talk about them. You just talk about them. Don't stop sharing. They're silly things. They're weird things. You always talk about them. Like, Shayla never wore a bra. I don't know why, but she didn't, and it was not good all the time. But so, so now the whole world knows that, but whatever. So like that's the thing about being a death doula, and that's kind of how I got started. I just realized how important recognizing that last little bit of joy and pride and dignity that they have as they're passing. They still have it. It's so deep inside of them, and they just want you to see it. And that's what a death doula does. So that's what I did as a nurse first. And then once I saw the need for my patients as they were going home and then being readmitted, and I learned as a death doula, that's what they did. Then that's what I started doing as a nurse, and teaching my other nurses as they came in as young nurses. And then as I started meeting people who wanted to be death doulas and teaching them, and that's what there are certification companies that do that, and they teach you how to do these things, how to fill out the forms. There are communities for people that want to be doulas, because the grief that you absorb from these families can be overwhelming. So you need support too.
Yeah, I wish I would have known about that when my sister was taken away, because that would have been a lot easier, not easier, but a lot more comfortable process to go through, to let somebody else kind of handle all of that. Because that's a real rough time whenever you just don't think about all the different things that need to be done until it's too late. And then all those things are kind of compiling over time. So,
and we make sure everything gets addressed so that it doesn't pile up, and you have the time to enjoy your relationship.
Yeah, because there's a lot to think about. And then if you wait until your loved one passes, then you have all this stuff, like I said, just compiling on you. So it's nice. It's very comforting to know that there's somebody out there that can help you. That's very, having I guess what I'm saying is having, like, and I'm nothing against attorneys. I love attorneys. I used to want to be an attorney, but it's, I don't know, whenever you're working side by side with someone that's what they do, and they don't do anything else, and they stick with, what I mean? They know what they're talking about, and it's just a more, I don't know, comforting. I know with birth doulas, it's a lot more personable, than going to the hospital and things like that. It's not that the hospital isn't incapable. They're perfectly capable. It's just a lot more personal to have that. So, where would somebody go to learn how to do? Is it online? Is it in person? Is it both? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. The very best place to go, first of all, is deep, 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 deep inside of you, because you have got to make sure you have managed your traumas with death. They will come out at the worst times. You will fall in love with a patient that you never expect, and your trauma will come out, and you will sob at their funeral. And you know what? It's okay. It's okay, because their family. You know what they eat. You know what church they went to. Just grab one of them and cry with them. Don't do it by yourself. But definitely deal with your trauma first. I have a couple books that will help you with that. But also look for local hospices for volunteer opportunities. they'll do a lot of good training that will help you approach being a doula. A lot of them don't necessarily have doula opportunities yet because it's so new, but I really see Medicare starting to look at paying doulas because it's such a stopgap for these $16,000 hospital bills and rehab bills for patients who are hospice appropriate, who cannot go home because they don't have care at home, but cannot do rehab at a rehab facility. So, I mean, doulas really are the stopgap. And one of the organizations that you can look at that's really a good organization for certification is the National Hospice and Palliative Care organization. It's online. And they are working to make doulas more recognized so that maybe in the future, Medicare can see that. Now, a certified doula can get anywhere from $25 to $100 an hour.
I was going to ask that. I didn't know if it was volunteer only, or are there volunteers as well as people that have made it their career? Okay. Does it, what am I trying to say? Does it affect the quality of, are this one's still certified, or do you have to be certified to make it a career? Or, I mean, how does that work?
At this point, there's no registering body, so it's not regulated. I just really think in the future it's going to be so that Medicare can, regulate everything, because that's what they do. How soon in the future, I don't know. I just know it's a huge, huge, huge need. And since they're non-medical care providers, it's something that Medicare would probably feel really comfortable doing, because you're not going to give medications. You're not going to give shots. Like the most hands-on caregiving you would do is maybe helping change a brief, or give a bed bath, or help them get into a wheelchair while they can still stand. It is. It's really like caregiving in one aspect. This is just such a huge job, because that caregiving aspect is so much about their dignity. It is so much about their dignity and making sure they still keep it.
Mm-hmm. Is it good to be ordained? I just thought of that. I mean, is it good to be ordained so that way you can carry on, or what do you think?
It is, as long as you actually study some of the other religions that come with ordinations. I say that because I have been in Thai households, Lao households, Norse heathen households, many households. I did not recognize those gods. I didn't understand the religion. I didn't understand the language. But I understood love and dignity and compassion, and we figured it all out. When it comes to a religion you don't understand, and when they start asking you about their funeral requirements, you always ask if they have a faith leader that you could talk to, or is there a church that they've attended in the last 10 years that you could maybe ask for help from. And if there's not, you hit Google and you start searching.
Google it,
because I mean,
you gotta really, Google.
Yeah, because you really want to give them what they want. And I'll give you an example. I have learned more about the heathen line of faith in the last 6 years than I've ever learned in my whole life. And I don't know if this counts or not, but I got a call at 2 a.m. to come to the hospital because there was a gentleman with terminal agitation. He was huge and he wanted to fight. And I was like, well, don't fight him. So I drove to the hospital and I looked in the door and I was like, oh, it's him. I think I know what he wants to fight about. So I went and got 2 plastic swords, and that gentleman stabbed me I
It's not
said,
funny.
well, is it
It's
till
kind of funny.
death then? Oh my goodness. I said, it's till death then, sir. And he said, it is, and died. Does he get into Valhalla? I don't know. But he gave it a really good shot, and his family was so happy.
Oh,
And then
that's
I went and
sweet.
got a Band-Aid.
Well, yeah.
So,
Is that the
yeah.
weirdest situation you've ever been in a jail for? That was really cute.
No, I was helping a funeral home move a body, and it fell on me, and I was stuck for 4 hours.
Oh no.
Yeah, because we were in the stairs,
Mhm.
and we had to wait for an ambulance service, but they didn't want to come because the funeral home was already there.
Oh no. So for 4 hours you were stuck.
Under the dead body.
Oh, the stories.
They-
How long have you been doing this?
I've been I was a hospice nurse. Well, I was an oncology nurse for 5 years, and then I've been doing hospice ever since. So, I've been a nurse for 9 years.
Yeah. Well, do you have any
think
books
so.
that you can recommend that if somebody's interested in learning?
I do. Two of them are more support. If you once you become a death doula,
Mhm.
they give you the steps down to the minutes before death. They tell you what it looks like, so you're not surprised. It's good for you to have copies for the family, and I really like it. Everybody calls it the little blue book. If you say that, your clergy, your case managers, your hospice nurses, everybody that as a death doula you would work with on a team, they're going to go, oh, the blue book. It's called Gone From My Sight, and it has a sailboat on the front. It's by Barbara Carnes. She's a nurse. I made sure I got a copy for my boyfriend when his dad died, because it literally tells you what to look for on the body and what the patient will experience in the months, weeks, days, and minutes before death, so that it's not scary for you as the caregiver, because that's something else the doula does. We address the family's fears too, and we make sure that they are able to spend as much time with our patient as possible, so that they can collect memories. Just taking that fear away, so they know what to expect, relieves so much. The other one is By Your Side, a guide for dying at home. It's also by Barbara Carnes. It's just another really good book. It deals more with the grief of somebody who was at the bedside while their loved one passed away. The other two are more cerebral, so they're for somebody that really wants to think about death and dying. It's The Four Things That Matter Most and Dying Well, and they're by Dr. Ira Byock. And he was in the 1990s kind of one of the forefront of the physicians who started pushing hospice and realizing that death and dying patients were not being treated appropriately, and they were having a lot of pain and issues that weren't being treated at the end of life. So he's one of the kind of forefathers that really got it started. But those are two of his books, and they're really good.
When did hospice start? I don't remember it being around whenever, or was it?
So it's a forever thing. It's the Egyptians had hospice.
Oh, okay.
You can see that in the way that they cared for their bodies before they died and then prepared them at death. They were so well cared for and dignified with their preparing and treatment of the bodies. But as long as people have been dying, we've been taking care of them. Nuns had homes full of people during consumption when they were dying, and they just cared for them. Because there's always been that fear of the unknown and not wanting to die alone. So there's always been compassionate people who have tried to reach out and make that happen. And those are the people that really do well as doulas, as death doulas or birth doulas. Now the certification for birth doulas, yeah, I wouldn't do it.
It'd be cool to be both, to get to see.
Yeah, it really would.
I like going. That would be neat.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's good. So you get real close with your patients and stuff. You're almost like their best friend for a little bit. That's
you
sweet.
are. And you get so close with the family. They welcome you in. They're like, "Hey, did you eat?" And you're like, have you showered?
Have you
What's that
eaten?
smell?" You know? Yeah. So you really
Mhm.
start taking care of them, and they appreciate it. They need it.
Mhm.
They need it. And that's why they asked you in. Because right now, insurance doesn't pay for this,
Mhm.
but it is out of their pocket. And it could be for 2 hours a day or 6 hours a day. It just depends on their needs and their ability to afford a doula. So,
So you do
yeah.
it, this is okay. Have you had people that have just called you saying, maybe I don't know how old, whatever age, 79, 85, something like that. And I'm healthy, but I need to make plans for when I get unhealthy. Do you handle those too, or is it just people that are like terminally ill?
No, I absolutely do those too. Those are actually the most fun. Those are the ones you wind up with the Ouija board on the pamphlet
Yeah.
because they have so much to plan and they're crazy. So it's really fun. Um, um, yeah. So they do call, but usually those people have a death really close to them fairly recently that opened their eyes to their mortality. So I always look in their history to see what's going on. And the thing about families who have had a death with hospice is most hospice companies offer family grief therapy. And so I always send them back to them after I help them. I always am like, hey, you should maybe go take advantage of this. Because grief is just not something that you should deal with alone, especially after a loss.
And there's a whole
Yeah.
process that they go through whenever I've only been involved with, I think, two people that, with hospice. One was my uncle, and I wasn't really there, but for a short period of time. And the other one was a friend of the family. So I don't even know what happens. I would need a death doula. God forbid anything should ever happen. But you
Yeah.
mentioned a guided meditation or a meditation, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, what's that?
It's so it's just a quick visualization. Goodness gracious. Um, I won't tell you exactly what it does, but at the end, and actually like kind of in the middle, some people get uncomfortable. Just open your eyes.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
So if you're doing the visualization and you start to panic, just open your eyes. It's over with.
Okay, you got that,
I'll keep
everybody?
going and finish
Open your eyes and
everybody
it'll
else.
stop. Okay.
You'll be
Disclaimer,
fine.
if you have,
Start to
okay,
panic, open your
if,
eyeballs.
if you have certain
So just
illnesses, you're not supposed to do this, right? If you've got
oh
this,
no,
if
no,
you've
you're
got,
fine. No, there's no flashing lights. Nobody's gonna
okay,
come possess you or anything like that. Nothing weird, I promise.
okay.
It's actually relaxing to me, but you'll know why I'm weird after I tell you what this is.
There's no
So close
spiders.
your eyes. No, oh God, no, no. So just close
Inside
your
joke.
eyes. Yeah,
Okay,
we'll tell you about that. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and just relax. If you look down, you're going to see that you're standing on a white floor. If you look around, you realize there's nothing on that white floor. There's just 4 white walls. And above those 4 white walls is a white ceiling. But what you notice is there's no door and there's no window. Right. All of the seams meet and there's no way to escape. Take a minute to feel the emotions that come over you as you realize you're stuck in that white room. What 3 words would you use to explain how you feel right now? Once you have them, open your eyes.
Weird. Pain, panic, and fear.
So that is how you feel about death.
Yeah. there's parts of it that I definitely wonder about for sure. Wow.
Yeah.
Pain, panic, and fear.
I know enough about you to think that's pretty accurate.
Mhm. Don't want to do it.
They first did this exercise on me when I was 15 after my mom passed away. And there were 20 of us in a circle, and I'm the only one that said relaxed, calm, and peaceful.
Oh,
They sent me to therapy.
you sent you to therapy? Oh my
They
God.
sent me to therapy. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So yeah, that's how you feel about death. If you do feel those feelings, then that's definitely something that you need to think about, work on. I always suggest death doulas plan their own funeral before they ever try to go plan anybody else's.
Yeah, that's good
Just so
advice.
you see how it feels.
That's really good advice.
And I am the worst one to say, do as I say and not do, because I didn't do it until I had to have brain surgery. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying. And I've planned hundreds of funerals. But it was a very good exercise. And that's why I strongly suggest that now. Just facing your own mortality before you try to help anybody else.
How long does it take to go through like the training and stuff, or do you just, is it at your own pace type thing?
So there are anywhere from 6-week to 16-week classes. The good news is, while it can be expensive, most doula programs have scholarship slots because they understand how important this is, and that for some people, this is healing and therapeutic. So you can apply for those as well. But I would definitely go to the International End of Life Doula Association, and then the National Hospice and Palliative Care Association, and then Google like hospice offices near me, and then just call them and say, hey, do you have any volunteer services that I could volunteer for? And then go meet the dying in your neighborhood and see what it's all about.
Right. Trying to get that experience behind you. And I guess I would have been when I was 19, I helped my grandmother at the end, so I was helping. I didn't help with anything legal, nothing like paperwork or anything like that. I guess that was done, but everything else, and I was 19 and I was assisting and didn't even know that that's what, you know what I mean? She stayed home. She stayed home. So that's a really good feeling when you're with somebody. I mean, it's sad, but at the same time, whenever you're with somebody and you're easing that transition, and it can make it, I don't know, it can make it smoother, and it can feel like more loved, rather than just you've got to do this and you've got to do this and you've got to do this. You kind of take it one step at a time with them, and then they can celebrate their life. You don't have to. Yeah, I like that. Well, I'd like to also ask you, I don't want to forget about this, Bell, Book, and Bone. Tell us about that a little bit. I'm very excited about it.
Well, you are a big part of Bell, Book, and Bone. So I had done a type of bone throwing when I was little, but then my grandmother passed away and I kind of put it away. And then I ran into you and I was like, what is this weird woman doing? And then we just resonated together so well. And so Bell, Book, and Bone was born. And I am clergy through ordained through two different churches. I do death doulas, but I also do tarot and bone throwing. And I just kind of use it as an out for my community, and it is a business, so there's that aspect. But ever since I've had work, so it gives me an outlet for my nursing, my soul. So it kind of has saved me, as much as some of the people have said that I've been able to help them. They're just helping me. So Yeah.
You
That's
have
that's
a
like a bonus.
website or a Facebook or both that you want to kind of have people go to?
I
I know
don't
you
have
have
a
TikTok.
website yet because I'm not smart enough to figure out a website, but I have Facebook, TikTok, and a YouTube. I
Mhm.
have a YouTube.
Is there
It's
anything
still
else you want to leave with everybody? Maybe some advice or, just some words, some kind words, anything you want to say?
um, if you lose a loved one and you are feeling their grief, like they're just not here, talk about them. They'll never go away if you talk about them. And my favorite thing is to talk about the dumbest things they've ever done. Go out to breakfast at Waffle House at 2 a.m. with 3 of your cousins and talk about the dumbest things that you can think of that, I don't know, my grandpa ever did. We talked about his overalls over his t-shirt. Why? Because we could. And his food shelf. Because he put his food on his little belly and said it was for later. And I know those Waffle House ladies thought we were lunatics because we laughed until we cried, but we needed it. And he was alive for another day because we talked about him. Hold their hands, look at their fingers, feel their hair. Just love on them. Love on you. We don't love on ourselves enough. That's really it. If you want to be a good birth doula or death doula, just spread the love.
Spread the love. My sister, when she was killed, we had a funeral, and then we had a party, like a celebration of life at my house. It was like the
Yeah.
cousins, and there was, I think, one aunt there, but it was mostly the cousins or friends, stuff like that. And we sat around and, we had a couple glasses of wine, we had some food, we told stories about her. It was so nice. And my family got mad at me for doing that.
No,
Mhm.
you were grieving in your own way.
And we were,
It's real grief.
mhm. And it was beautiful because we all sat around and just, like I said, celebrated her life, talked about the funny things she did. Oh my gosh, she was so funny. She used to beat me up all the time, even in her 20s, beat me up all but if somebody touched me, no, she would be on them. But yeah, but she would beat me up. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on. It was so interesting to talk about being a death doula. And I encourage everybody to get out there and Google it and get some information. Go to the 2 organizations that she mentioned and the books. I'll see if I can get a copy of those books or a picture of them anyway, and we'll put them at the end of this video. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us. Blessed be.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Blessed be.
Hi everyone. I wanted to do a little segment just so you could know 2 things that you will see really close to the end of life. And then, as you can tell, Zoe has decided to join us. She often comes whenever I'm going to make dream sachets, but she's very sensitive to end of life issues as well. Cats do that. And you'll notice if you're in the home of someone who's passing that even if the cat has never liked that person, they'll be very sensitive to the fact that they're passing as well. So they'll go lay on their bed, they may meow very loudly. At the very end, they may lay on the bed and not move until that person has passed. Zoe's just also very sensitive to magic in general, so she lays on my altar, which is why it's on a tiny ledge. But she likes to help me make my sachets and inspect my tarot cards and my bone kit as well. But I'm gonna have to move her so I can talk to you. Oh, she's gonna go. Okay. So 2 things that you can expect to see that are often more disturbing to us than they are to the patient. One is called visioning. And this is when the patient starts seeing the people that are coming to them that are going to help them over. And you usually see this because they're pointing and talking to people that aren't there. Usually dead relatives, people they've known in the past, people they're very close to. They could be recently deceased or have been long gone. It's so common and it's so comforting to these people. Sometimes as a nurse, I've been asked to medicate them to stop that. And as a death doula, I've been asked, how do I make it stop? And the answer for both of those is you don't. It is something soothing to them. It's calming, it's comfortable. If they don't seem agitated, we're not going to do something to take that soothing coping skill away from them. So let them do it. One of the things that I always help do as a death doula is bring pictures in of those people that have passed that brought them comfort in their past. So pictures of their parents, their wives, their siblings, anybody that might have passed that they had good relationships with. It helps that visioning occur earlier so that they're less likely to develop terminal agitation. They will probably still develop terminal agitation because it's not just a mental coping skill, it's a physical side effect of death and dying. So there's still a chemical aspect to it that we can absolutely help with. At least medical professionals can when it comes to medicating terminal agitation. But we all want to be able to do something, don't we? Sitting there with our hands tied is so frustrating because terminal agitation is very distressing for the people viewing it and not just the patient, because they start writhing in bed, they might moan, and they're unable to communicate to us what is wrong. And we want to fix it. We're there because we love that person. I have normal nightmare sachets that I make that helps earlier in the process of dying because the brain deregulates early in the dying process, so they start having nightmares. Sometimes it's the stress and fear of knowing that they're going to die. So we can make those early on. And then later on, I have other things that we can add to help systemically. They're still not ingesting it because one of the things, especially that Southerners or people who feed others to cope with stress, we have a hard time with is we're not able to feed them because they stop eating. They move over to sips and chips, so like little tiny sips of fluid and ice chips. One of the things that you can do if you still feel like you have to feed them, make flavored ice and then bust it up into little chips. You still get the soothing sensation of creating something special for them to eat, and they still get that interesting taste and flavor. Even if they're not able to eat, they'll still really appreciate it. So in my normal dream sachet, and pardon me, I have a cold, is just chamomile. It's the flower. You can buy this at most pagan stores, bulk online. I honestly try to buy mine at Native American powwows. I like to pay it back if I can. Rose petals just to kind of sweeten their dreams. These are roses that have been given to me. I just hang them up and dry them in my attic and then pop them in a jar. Lavender, just your purple lavender buds. I'm Southern, so I also like to use red buds, but they wind up in my jelly more often than my jars. Valerian root. So you can also make yourself tea out of this valerian root. It doesn't taste wonderful. There are a lot of medications that this counteracts with, so please talk to your pharmacist before you take this, but it will make you sleepy. So I just use it to aid in the sleep process for those that are having nightmares. Again, it's going in a sachet under a mattress. They're not going to ingest this. And then cascarilla. This is just a highly protective thing. And you just take a scoop, measure with your heart, and put it in your pouch. Now let's talk about pouches. They can be little. They can be satin and red. And they can be big and cotton and red. It can be a sock. It doesn't matter. I prefer something, if it's for a child, that they can squish, or if it's for someone who's passing and they can still smell. Smell is one of the last things that go. They're able to crunch it in their hand, and a lot of times their hands will curl up and you can open their fingers and put it in there and they can smell it because they crush it and the lavender and the chamomile comes through into their senses and they're able to smell it, and it just produces a lot of comfort. But in the beginning, you just put it right underneath that mattress, and it helps reduce anxiety when they're trying to sleep. You know, good sleep is so important to good health. Even when you're passing, reducing anxiety at any level is something that we really want to do. And I highly advise, if you're going to make one for everybody there. You're all probably pretty stressed at that point. As you go into the death and dying process, you'll experience more issues with their intestines, heart rate, stress, sleep, appetite, cough and secretions. If you have a hospice nurse, they're going to have mechanical and medicinal ways to help support you with that. But again, you're going to feel like I'm just giving medicine and I feel like my hands are tied. And these are people that aren't necessarily the death doulas, but these are like the support people at the bedside. So really what I'm telling you is for you, not the patient. This is something to give you to do something physically so you feel like you are aiding this person. And that is so key, because reducing your anxiety reduces their anxiety. You're there because you have an energetic connection to that person. And death doulas, we do it too. We absolutely go in there with our whole hearts and we just love the entire family, and we quickly build those energetic connections. So we have to restrain our energies so that we don't reflect any anxiety onto the family or the patient. But that if you're family, it's even harder because you deeply, deeply love this person. So use these sachets for you. Use the making of them as a methodical way to ground yourself in the herbs. If you make it and you're like, I can't put this under their bed, go throw it outside. Walk around barefoot, come back, make another one. Okay, if it's the process of making it that helps ground you so that you're better able to help your passing friend or loved one, then that's fine. It doesn't necessarily have to be this. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's actually you. It's you that's helping. But these help too. These are a big booster. So for additional symptoms further into the death and dying process, not just the nightmares and that kind of stuff, not the fear, because you're going to help them learn and talk about it. You're all going to be there to support each other. Now we're moving into like symptoms, okay? I'm not a crystal hound, but I have a pot full of rocks. There's one for everything, and I will tell you honestly, I just think they're all pretty. I would have to look every one of them up and figure out which one specifically would do the best for what I needed it for. Herbs I'm good with, but this is something I would ask an expert for. My friend Caitlin is my expert. Essential oils and massages, rubbing their feet and their hands is so relaxing to them. And just rubbing across their forehead like this, very relaxing. When they are terminally agitated, do not touch them. It's an anxiety thing. They're not going to want clothes, they're not going to want bed sheets, and they're definitely not going to want you touching them. But if you could get a dab of lavender on their chest, the smell will help relax them. And these are just essential oils. This one's eucalyptus. You'll notice that they'll start having trouble managing their secretions. These aren't abnormal secretions. It's not like they're coughing and like they have a cold. These are just their normal secretions. They just have trouble swallowing it. It's the muscles. But the eucalyptus, again, this is more for you than them, but eucalyptus, it's another soothing thing. It does seem to help them, but it also helps you too. There's a whole bunch of different oils out there that you can get. Look up, see what it is you need. But if you're going to add something to your dream sachets, rosemary, if you don't have something that I listed over here, rosemary does it all. Pop some of that in there. It smells good when you crush it. The hyssop is good for intestinal pain and gas. A lot of times our patients stop having bowel movements and gas builds up and it's very painful. So put this in your little sachet, but you can also rub their stomach and it'll help them pass their gas. Pat their back just like a baby. They won't mind. It's a loving touch. It's always going to be accepted. Damiana is good for upset stomach and constipation. Again, it's something that happens naturally. It's one of the first systems that shuts down. And then mullein leaf. It's really fluffy. I like it. It's good for that cough and again those secretions. I'm going to have to make myself some tea. It is really fluffy. I like it. Definitely going to have to make some tea. But all of these things just go in these little pouches and they go right under your bed. And you can use them for any age or any reason. But I definitely use them as an end-of-life doula frequently, and I hope that that helps. Thank you.
That little chihuahua dog, something else. And then we got the little baby right here. Little baby. Yeah. And then chicken doesn't like her very much.
We got you.
Little scissor beat.
Get ready and stuff. Here's your setting up. Oops, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
It's kind of an empty table now.
Did very well.
We did some awesome. That's a marmoset. Joffrey marmoset.
You did do well. Look at that.
I know.
This
Like
was
all this
full
was
of
taxidermy,
taxidermy
anthropomorphic. Little rat mouths. Did you see the balls with the rat mouths?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was us, and we had sold out of like 9 of them.
Sold out.
Sold out. Hey, wipe those clean.
That's pretty. I like these. I'm a mandible freak.
Oh yeah.
This is our first time at the Oddities Expo this year, and it has been absolutely amazing, and definitely is going to be something that we do every single year. We've met so many great people, and we have learned a lot about phone reading, which is actually very, very interesting to us.
Well, thank you.
So, thank you.
We're on TV.
Straight across will take care of that area.
You can kind of differentiate, you know, what's witchcraft and what isn't, you know.
Focus on that. Do not do the same things that you've done in the past. It's a whole new situation.
This is the love bones, and on top of it is the heart. And that really represents like getting whatever you want. This is how to ask for it. You have to ask the universe, this is what I want. So if that's what you want is a relationship there, then absolutely.
That concludes another episode of Everyday Witchcraft. I want to say thank you for all those that tune in, and a very special thank you goes to Maeve Wilders for joining us on the show. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Blessed be.